Ding, 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 dong bell. Ding, 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 dong bell. Hark, hark, ring, ring, tis for the burying of poor old Simon Snell. How long will the ding dong bell ring? Ding, 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 dong bell. How long will it ring? Tis for the burying of poor old Simon Snell. How long will it ring? Tis for the burying of poor old Simon Snell. How long will it ring? Tis for the burying of poor old Simon Snell. How long will it ring? Tis for the burying of poor old Simon Snell. How long will it ring? Tis for the burying of poor old Simon Snell. How long will it ring? Tis for the burying of poor old Simon Snell. How long will it ring? Tis for the burying of poor old Simon Snell. How long will it ring? Tis for the burying of poor old Simon Snell. How long will it ring? Tis for the burying of poor old Simon Snell. How long will it ring? Tis for the burying of poor old Simon Snell. How long will it ring? Tis for the burying of poor old Simon Snell.
Well, that was a round called Poor Old Simon Snell. The vicar, Reverend Stephanie Fountain, lent me some books of rounds, which were, again, like glees that we sang earlier on. Rounds were enormously popular at the time of these burials, and that's about a burial, so it seems very appropriate to sing from one of the vicar's books of rounds. I've completely forgotten the name of the chap who wrote it, but it was obviously a very cheerful, happy soul, singing about poor old Simon Snell. The next three songs that we're going to do are all ones that I'd written specially for this project. And this one is called Sin Eater. In the Shropshire Folklore book from the 1880s, edited by Charlotte Byrne, she mentions at some length the custom of the Sin Eater, who is a character who appears at funerals, and you feed this Sin Eater with food and drink and some money, and they eat the food and drink off the corpse of the person who's just died and take upon them the burden of their sins, the idea being that their ghosts will not return to haunt their old places where they used to walk, and their soul will go onward in a happy state to whatever lies ahead for departed souls. Very cheerful idea. Mary Webb used it in her book Precious Spain, and the last known sin eater in this country is buried not far away at Rattling-Hope. Richard Munslow, who died in 1906, not that long ago really. So this is called Sin Eater, and some of the words in this song are what the original Sin Eaters used to actually say as part of the ritual. Sin Eater.
I stand, but you don't see me. I speak, but you don't hear. I ask, but you don't answer me. I call, you don't come near. I tread where you've forsaken. I breathe the air you've lost. For all your sins in all your life, I'll help you count the cost. I'll ease your journey easier. I'll ease your sorrow care. I'll take the burden off your bones as your
Sin eater. Very important local custom. The next one is called the Frenchman's Mile. One of the graves in the churchyard in Bishop's Castle is of a French officer from the French army who was sent to Bishop's Castle as a prisoner of war during the Napoleonic Wars. So and he died in Bishop's Castle, I think in 1813. But prisoners of war, officers from the French army as prisoners of war were sent to various places a long way from the coast, including Bishop's Castle. There are quite a lot of French officers stationed in the town. And because it was a long way from the coast, it was assumed they wouldn't try and escape, just the odd 300 miles or so. It's quite a long walk. And so they were allowed a certain amount of freedom. There were huge camps built for the lower ranks of French prisoners of war, but the officers were allowed a certain amount of freedom. They had to stay put during the night, but during the day they could walk freely, and they were allowed to go a whole mile from where they were staying. And so in certain ways, they were kind of honoured guests as a kind of exotic import for the town for a while. And there were marriages and children were born and deaths, including the gravestone in the churchyard. So this was just about not the chap who died. This is about another French officer who was enjoying his local celebrity here in Bishop's Castle and flashing his French mustachios at the young ladies who he greatly admired. So this is the Frenchman's Mile.
I'm an officer in the army and I fought at Waterloo. Fought for old Napoleon, the best that we could do. We fought in Spain and Portugal and up to Russia as well. But when he defeated us and kicked us all to hell. Now I walk the Frenchman's Mile, titty-fa-lay, fa-la-fa-loo. All in the finest style, titty-fa-lay, fa-la-fa-loo. Oh, zinky, minky, tip of the wink, bonjour and gardy-loo. Linky, winky, skinny, malinky, pinky, parlez-vous. Now there's 20 miles of water to France's golden shore. 20 miles of water to the land that I adore. 20 miles of water, but it's 300 miles away. So here I am in Shropshire, and here I have to stay. And I walk the Frenchman's Mile, titty-fa-lay, fa-la-fa-loo. All in the finest style, titty-fa-lay, fa-la-fa-loo. Oh, zinky, minky, tip of the wink, bonjour and gardy-loo. Linky, winky, skinny, malinky, pinky, parlez-vous. So here I am in Shropshire, a prisoner of the war. I'm free to roam in the daytime, but at night they lock the door. So I take my morning promenade, a mile either way, and I twirl my French mustachios at all the ladies gay. As I walk the Frenchman's Mile, titty-fa-lay, fa-la-fa-loo. All in the finest style, titty-fa-lay, fa-la-fa-loo. Oh, zinky, winky, tip of the wink, bonjour and gardy-loo. Linky, winky, skinny, malinky, pinky, parlez-vous. Oh, and here I'm quite a novelty, and they think I'm rather fine. They ask me out for company, they ask me out to dine. I use sophistication, I make the ladies sigh. But those lovely buxom country girls are the ones that catch me eye. As I walk the Frenchman's Mile, titty-fa-lay, fa-la-fa-loo. All in the finest style, titty-fa-lay, fa-la-fa-loo. Oh, zinky, minky, tip of the wink, bonjour and gardy-loo. Linky, winky, skinny, malinky, pinky, parlez-vous. And to a Shropshire lass, she's fairly won me heart. Whatever the future holds for us, we'll never be apart. We promenade out together, and I teach her French all day. And then at night she teaches me to ooh and ah and hey. And we walk the Frenchmans Mile, titty-fa-lay, fa-la, all in the finest style, titty-fa-lay, fa-la-fa-loo. Zinky, minky, tip of the wink, bonjour and cardi-loo. Winky, winky, skinny, malinky, pinky, parlez-vous. As we walk the Frenchman's Mile, titty-fa-lay, fa-la-fa-loo. All in the finest style, titty-fa-lay, fa-la-fa-loo. Zinky, minky, tip of the wink, bonjour and cardi-loo. Winky, winky, skinny, malinky, pinky, parlez-vous. Zinky, minky, tip of the wink, bonjour and cardi-loo. Winky, winky, skinny, malinky, pinky, parlez-vous.
Hooray! There we are, some totally authentic 18th century, 19th century French there for you. The last song is The African's Grave, another of the gravestones in Bishop's Castle churchyard. Strikingly unusual, partly because the text on the stone is facing the opposite direction from all the others, so it's easy to spot. The person in the grave isn't named in full, just given the initials ID, but and buried in 1801. And so it's before slavery had been abolished, and the biblical text on the gravestone is one that was used quite frequently among the abolition campaigners at the time. God hath created of one blood all nations of men. So you get that phrase in the song, and it's just another one that I concocted for this project. It's the African talking to his master, or he was presumably maybe not a slave, perhaps a servant, but obviously wishing he was back home, as in finally he does make it, as you'll hear if you listen carefully. So this is The African's Grave, our last song.
Bum-ba-dum-a-dingy-yada, bum-ba-da-ba-yum. 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 One blood, one blood. God hath created of one blood all nations, all women, all men. God hath created of one blood all nations, all women, all men. You are not so cruel, not so unkind, but your eyes are blinkered, oh, your eyes are blind. I play your games like a little black toy, but you don't see me, your little black boy. Not once you ask about my home. Not once you ask about my life. Not once you ask about my name. Not Bye.